Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Deadheading is removing spent flowers from plants. Today we are deadheading roses and butterfly bushes. Also, invasive plants can cause lots of problems for the environment. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Rosa Garcia.
Hi.
Rosa is the landscape specialist right here at Agri Center, and Joel and Diamond will be joining me later. How you doing today, Rosa?
Doing great. Thank you
for joining us today.
Yes, of course.
right,
It's my pleasure.
We're good. We're glad you're here. We're here at Agri Center International, right in front of the Farmers Market building.
Yes.
We have some knockout roses here.
Yes.
And you're going to talk to us about deadheading those knockout roses, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So these knockout roses, they need some care.
Okay.
So we're going to be giving them a little TLC this afternoon.
Okay.
So, you know, as you can see, some of the roses, the blooms are already spent.
Yeah.
These have been blooming for about 2 months already. So, you know, one of the life cycles of the blooming process is already done. We're starting a new one. As you can see, we're getting
Right.
some new blooms already. So we want to make room for those. So yeah, so I think this will be the right time to do some deadheading to them.
Okay, well, let's get right to it then. Let's go ahead and deadhead.
So like this bloom right here, you know, these blooms are already done. The first thing that I want to do first, and this is the very important step,
Okay.
you want to kind of sterilize your pruners, especially with rose bushes. They're very susceptible to infections. And
So what are you
disease.
using to
This
sterilize?
is just using regular rubbing alcohol,
Okay.
you know, so and a little bit of some cotton pads, you know, that's all you need. And so it's pretty easy, just wipe
Okay.
them off like that. It's perfect. So here we are.
All right.
This is the spent bloom. So what I'm going to do with this one, I usually cut down 2 nodes down. This one is already spent, so like we're not going to be getting any new blooms on this whole stem. So I'm
Gotcha.
just going to go down all the way, and kind of when you do your cut, I don't know if you can see it there, but you do a slanted cut, so you don't do it like straight
Okay.
like that, but slanted, and that prevents any water from collecting on your
Right.
rose, you know. So you can do it just like that or just like this. So either way, but cut
So
it.
nice, yeah,
Yeah.
slanted cut. Almost
Slanted
45-degree
cut, so you
Okay.
can see that. So and that's just gonna keep your bush nice and healthy. And you
Okay.
just do the same thing with all the other ones. As you can see, we have others here, and they're in between, you know, the new blooms. So you kind of want to look at the bottom and see. These are 2 different ones here. So I would cut 1, 2 nodes down on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go right there.
Okay.
That's another slanted cut.
Right.
And this one here too. So as you can see, this one's it's got 2 stems right there. So I'm going to do 1, 2. So cut, slanted.
Got it. And you're looking for all of the branches, of course, that have the spent blooms on them.
Exactly. So
Okay.
this is another one right
Alright.
here. It's in the back, but there we go. So and it's also you know, shaping your bush.
Sure.
It's making it look nicer. So this one, I see that there's new growth. So I'm cutting above the new growth.
Right.
And that's some of the others.
So while you're
yeah.
cutting too, you're also encouraging it to grow out.
Exactly.
Right, 'cause you don't want it to go in, right?
Right, exactly. So whenever you see, you know, like one of the branches, let me see an example here. So, you know, so we got branches growing out. So I don't see the new nodes on this one. See, so I wanted to show an example.
Sure.
Oh, like this one here.
Okay.
Like this one has new growth here.
I
So
see.
if I was going to cut it, I would cut it. You know, I would cut this branch off instead of the one that is, you know, growing out. So this one's growing to
Yeah.
the inside. So that
Okay.
one is cut. So yeah, cut that.
Okay.
You know, and
Yeah.
so that's how you shape your bush. And it also encourages, the more deadheading you do, it encourages the rose bush to give you some more blooms. So
Okay.
yeah.
So Rosa, before we go over to the butterfly bushes, right, we're going to be deadheading those as well. Why
Yes.
do we need to deadhead?
So the first reason would be for aesthetic reasons. You know, you don't want your rose bush to have all these dead, dead buds already. You
Sure.
know, so because we're getting the new cycle of blooming started, we want to make room for those. So first to keep your rose bush looking great.
Right.
Second reason is because your rose bush needs attention. And so the maintenance that you give it, it's the more beautiful you're gonna
Right.
get your rose bush to grow. So you are looking also to reshape it and shape it to your liking. So whenever you don't deadhead your rose bushes, I don't think you get enough or
Right.
as many blooms as you would like. And so if
Right.
you are fertilizing your rose bush and you're doing all the right things, but you're not deadheading, that could not give you the result that you want. So I think that's a good reason for deadheading. Yeah. Besides
that's-
just keeping it pretty.
Right, yeah, that's a good explanation. So yeah, let's walk over to the butterfly
All right.
bushes and talk about those, all right?
Yes.
All right, Rosa, so yeah, beautiful butterfly bushes you have here.
Yes,
All right.
and they're at the peak of their blooming right now.
Okay.
Yes. So, but as you can see, some of these blooms are already spent.
I can see that.
So, although we are getting, new blooms,
Yeah.
these are already done. So we want our butterfly bush to look good.
Okay.
So once again, after doing, different plants, you want to sterilize.
That's so important, right?
Yeah, so
Sterilize.
sterilize anytime. Don't forget, always
Right.
bring your alcohol with you, and I will wipe them off once
Yeah.
more.
Because we want to sterilize, we don't want to pass on any diseases or anything like that.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. But especially between different plants,
Right.
so
Exactly right.
that will do it.
Okay.
So as you can see, this is one of the spent blooms. So I like to cut these right here all the way down. So I would take,
And this is still
the
at
whole
that
stem.
angle that you were telling us
Yes,
about before?
I still do it at an angle. So just to make sure the plant will be, free of fungus or anything that might collect,
Right.
with the water.
Yeah.
So that's one.
And it
Here's
allows,
another one.
for good air circulation.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah, so you don't have those fungal disease problems.
Right.
Okay.
So you want to leave room, for all the air to circulate around it for sure. So like this one, these blooms are spent. So I want to go 2 leaves down, and as you can see, there's new growth all
Yeah, I can
around
see
it.
it.
So
I see it.
I will cut it right there in between, like that.
Okay, that's good.
Pretty easy.
Good clean cuts too, right?
Yes.
That's what you want. Not jagged cuts, but clean cuts.
So make sure that the stem is not like split or anything. You want to keep your pruners or your scissors or anything you use nice and sharp, so that
Okay,
you don't get any split stems. This is the last one on this little bush.
Okay,
There we go.
okay.
So I'm gonna leave the other ones. These are still looking good, so I think I'm gonna leave them a little longer. And that's just like the rose bushes is going to encourage the
Right.
butterfly bush to keep blooming for you, attracting all those beautiful butterflies and pollinators.
Yeah, we definitely want to attract those pollinators and such. So Rosa, we thank you for that demonstration. Excellent
Yeah,
job
of
out here.
course.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you for having me.
On these purple cone flowers, we have a classic case of powdery mildew. When I think about powdery mildew, I think about warm days, cool nights, high humidity. The thing about powdery mildew is this: it is a white mold. It is looking for moisture to help it start its life cycle. So there's a couple options we have here. One is you can actually physically remove this cone flower plant, right? Because you don't want it to affect the other cone flowers that are in this area. If you want to use a fungicide, I will use a low impact fungicide. Sulfur can be one that you can use. Neem oil is one. Or how about copper-based fungicide? Read and follow the labels on that. Make sure you get good coverage as well. And then something else too, before you run out and buy another purple coneflower plant, look for resistant varieties. All right, Joellen. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about invasive plants, right? Always an
Invasive-
interesting conversation, right?
It is very interesting. And let's start out with a definition. I mean, what
Yes,
is an
please.
invasive plant? It is a plant that causes some kind of ecological or economic harm in a new environment where it's not native.
Okay, where it's not native.
Where it is not native. Now, invasive plants are capable of doing quite a few things. They cause extinction of native plants and animals. They also reduce biodiversity in an area. And of course, they compete with native organisms for the limited resources that are there. And they alter habitats. So
pretty bad.
you don't really think about it, but we're going to talk about enough that maybe people will start thinking about, the plants that they buy.
Okay.
Of course, plants with the highest invasive potential. They are prolific seeders.
Of course.
They are vigorous growers. They adapt well to any different kind of environmental conditions to grow in, which sounds like what? A desirable plant that we all want in our gardens, right?
It sounds like something you would want.
Yes,
for sure.
that's all of the qualities that we would like to have for our own garden plant, which is how they've.
I would agree.
This is exactly what's happened. Now, if seeds of these plants leave the garden, by wind or wildlife, because sometimes they get attached to, wildlife that goes by them and then they get dispersed in another yard,
Okay.
Or out in the woods, or by birds eating the seeds
Yes.
and then dispersing them other places. So, once they get out there, they may outcompete the native plants that are already there. An example would be the Bradford pear. That is the perfect example. Originally, it was given the patent, and now it is grafted. If you look at it, all Bradford pears are grafted onto a rootstock.
Okay.
And when the seeds, they're not real pears, but they're little seed pears. Mockingbirds, I've seen mockingbirds, they absolutely love them, and other birds eat them. They were supposed to be not viable, but unfortunately, they are viable once they go through the bird. And so if you go along I-40 during the spring when the pears are blooming, you can tell you're coming to an exit before you actually get to it, because they've planted Bradford pears there sometime because the birds have dispersed them, and now the wild pears are growing in that area and taking over the native habitat.
Right.
Pears it's a vigorous tree. These have thorns and
the
everything else.
thorns,
So, I mean, it's not a desirable native plant.
Wow.
So that is the worst
And the
one.
thing about the Bradford pear, though, in the spring, they can be so beautiful.
It's beautiful, beautiful fall foliage.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Nice shape. But there are other varieties
Sure.
that, and of course, that like the Cleveland, that would be much better to plant. It has the same attributes.
Okay.
May not grow as vigorously or get as large, but those seeds are not viable. So, I mean, it's just the Bradford pear that has the bad reputation of having the viable seeds that get dispersed.
Wow. And then they break easily.
Yes. Yeah.
The limbs do.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's talk about the 6 top invasive
This is gonna be
plants
good.
in the United States. And we're talking the whole United States.
The whole United States. All right.
Kudzu.
Kudzu. I was waiting for
Number
that
one.
Number one.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was introduced in the United States in 1876. It was for an ornamental or in forage and erosion control plant. 1 million acres was planted in the Southeast by the Soil Conservation Service in the 1930s and 40s. By the 1950s, it was determined that it was invasive. So it did not take long for us to figure out that was an invasive species.
Took over pretty quick.
They took that because it can grow at a rate of 1 foot a day and 60 feet a year.
Think about that.
The vine takes over areas in the whole Southeast. I mean, it looks like some odd creatures are out there because it just covers everything.
Trees,
yeah,
telephone
it takes over
farm
smothers
equipment.
everything, and nothing can live under it. So
Man.
there you go.
Kudzu. All right.
The second one is Norway maple.
Okay. Okay.
It was brought to the U.S. in 1756 from Europe by John Bartram, who is a famous plant explorer here in the United States.
Okay.
So he brought it over, but see, he did not know that it would end up outcompeting the native maples in the Northeast and the Northwest.
Okay.
And that's where it's got a very dense canopy. So not only does it take over and it's very aggressive compared to our other native maples, but it shades out the wildflowers that are underneath too because it's got a dense canopy on it.
Wow, how about that? And think about that time period again.
1756, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Long time ago.
Long time. Okay.
Yeah. The third one, Japanese honeysuckle. I know we all know that, but it
All
was
over the place.
introduced in 1806 as an ornamental for erosion control. It's got a beautiful smell. You can always, in May around here, it smells beautiful out in the woods.
Yes.
But the seeds are dispersed by birds. It is now anywhere from Maine down to Florida, over to Texas, and in spots out west. It is an aggressive vine, and it can girdle. You know, when it starts climbing trees and stuff, it'll girdle the trees. It shades them, and it kind of smothers other native plants. So that's
the honeysuckle, right?
The honeysuckle.
Of course, we remember that from our youth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, golly, how about that?
Yeah,
All
it smells beautiful, but yeah, it's a little aggressive. The fourth one is purple loosestrife. It's a beautiful perennial.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
It's
that.
got gorgeous flowers on it. It was introduced in the 1800s as an ornamental and for medical uses. It grows aggressively in most of the United States. It takes over wetlands. That's the
okay.
problem. It's taking over wetlands. One plant can produce 2 million seeds.
Ouch.
And of course, the plant itself kind of grows like a bunch, and so it can grow outward at least a foot a year, especially in the wetlands where it really likes it.
Okay.
And then there's Japanese barberry.
Japanese barberry.
Japanese barberry.
We talked about that a time or two.
Yeah, we have. It was introduced in the 1800s as an ornamental garden plant to be a substitute for the European barberry that was found to harbor this black rust stem, a serious fungus disease of cereal crops. So what they did was they ended up substituting a bad plant for another bad plant.
Right.
This is its problem. It grows in deep shade, and it will produce dense thickets, especially in the Northeast.
Okay.
And its seeds are dispersed by birds. The very last one is one we all know, is English ivy.
It's ivy.
English ivy is considered one of the top 6 worst invasive plants in the United States. It was introduced from Europe in the 1700s as an easy-to-grow, evergreen ground cover.
Easy to grow.
Which it is.
It is.
But it's an aggressive vine that can kill trees by shading and girdling again.
Okay.
And the seeds, of course, are spread by birds.
So how can we make sure that we're not planting any of these non-native invasive plants?
Well, every area of the country has their own websites and their own lists. Tennessee, here we have 64 species on ours. You can visit our website and see a few of the websites you can visit to look in your area, or use your local state's websites to see if there are invasive plants that are for sale around your area. And just simply don't plant invasive species. Because we can control what's in our garden, what we plant there, but what we can't control is the animals, the insects, the birds, the wind that carries these plants to non-native areas.
That is good stuff. How about that? Interesting. So those are our top 6.
Those top 6.
All right, thank you much. Good information.
You're welcome.
We have this Russian sage that we had planted about a year ago in this big cement planter box here, and it's gotten pretty big and wild, and we have a maple right here that we planted near our Russian sage. So what I want to do, I want to kind of reshape it to our liking. We want to get these branches away from the maple. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. So I can see, where I'm leaving these here. So I'm gonna cut right above. You can kind of see where the new growth of leaves is. So I'm just gonna cut right above that. And again, as we have done with the other plants, we wanna do a slanted cut. So I'm going to go ahead and keep cutting the branches at the same distance. You wanna keep, cutting them at the same length so we can get a uniform shape. It seem a little cruel with our plants, but it's really a benefit to them. So I'm just keep cutting branches. All right. So now our Russian sage is now in control, and now it's not touching our Japanese maple anymore. So that was the goal.
All right, here's our Q&A segment. Y'all ready?
Ready.
These are some good questions. All right, here's
let's
our
have 'em.
first via email. Is there a way to control earwigs in the garden? And this is Alicia. So what do you think about that one, Joseph?
Yeah, earwigs are they're pretty tough to control. Of course, they like moist, dark cover. and you got your mulch, and you got all kinds of different perennial plants and annual plants that they can hide under. They're also attracted to light.
Yeah.
So if you kind of reduce some of your outdoor lighting, that could also help. But a good way to reduce the population is use traps. So you can take burlap bags, boards, newspapers, and put them around the garden and just let those earwigs come to them. Check them daily. If they got something, and dump them out, get rid of them. So that's a pretty easy way to handle them. And of course, you've always got chemical control like 7
Yeah.
permethrin, something like that.
Yeah, read and follow the label if you're going to use that. She did say that she replaced the soil in her raised beds to try to get rid of them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, she probably got
Trying
a
to
lot
change
of
the conditions,
them.
right?
Yeah, she probably got a lot of them out, but they're tough to get rid of. I mean, they're just everywhere, and then sometimes when it gets warm, they'll get inside the house, and then they'll come back out through cracks. So sealing up any cracks in your foundation and things like that will help them keep them from getting in and out.
Yeah, so the key here is you have to know the conditions that they like to thrive in, right? So it's damp, moist conditions. So if you have drainage issues, you need to correct the drainage.
Yeah,
on that. If you're going to use, a pesticide, read and follow the label on that. There's something else though. I actually learned this a couple of years ago. You can use one of those containers, like a cool Miracle Whip container, right? You can fill it, full of like vegetable oil.
Yeah.
They're attracted to the smell of vegetable oil. Cut a top in the lid. Yeah, let them drop in.
Let them drop on in. That's a good one.
Yeah, just position them, in the areas around the plants where they're a problem. They chew holes in the leaves is what they do. Right.
Yeah.
So they can be a nuisance, right? They're in high populations, but those are some good means to correct them.
Definitely.
All right, thank you for that question. We appreciate that. Here's our next via email. Why would the edges of my new potted Japanese maples leaves be turning brown? And this is from Sheila. So why do you think that's the case?
Oh,
Rosa?
that sounds like too much water. I would say, if you're watering your pot, because it is potted, so
Right, it is potted.
when it's not in the ground, it's harder for the plants to, stay, with the right moisture. So I would water it less. So if you're watering it maybe every 3 days or so, it depends on also the time of year that you potted your plant in, because if it's in cooler temperatures like in the spring or in fall, you need to water it less. So I would check on the pot every week, once a week. If the soil is still moist, then I would wait a few more days, about 3 more days, and then check it again. That's my rule of thumb. So you can wait even in between 2 weeks or so to water it if it's not too hot outside. Now, when it's in the summer, then you would water it more often, so maybe twice a week. So you can just check on your pot once every 3 to 4 days, and I think that will be the solution to that.
I think that would be good. That was awesome. That was real good recommendation there, because she did say it's sitting in shade. So I mean, it's in the right light condition for the most part. But
Exactly.
I think she's loving it too much. So watch the watering on that.
Exactly.
I think you'll be fine, right? 'Cause anytime those leaves brown around the edges, they start to curl up. Yeah, there's always a watering issue.
Yes, don't be afraid to neglect your plant a little bit. You're not neglecting it. You're actually taking care of it.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And if need be, just stick your finger down in there sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah. I do that a lot. Just stick that finger in there. If it comes out with nothing on it, you need to water it. If it's got some little dirt and soil particles on it, probably good.
Probably good. Yeah, it's just soil moisture meter right here.
Right, that's right.
Thank you for that question. We appreciate that. Here's our next via email. What is the best way to control crabgrass in my lawn? And this is Greg from right here in Memphis, Tennessee. So guess what, Greg? Yeah, we know somebody knows a little something about crabgrass. So what do you think about that, Joseph?
Man, crabgrass is a tough one.
Yeah,
it's a tough one to control. Crabgrass is a summer annual weed. Yeah. So it means that it dies every winter and then comes back in the spring once the seeds germinate. When your soil, top 2-4 inches of soil, generally get about 55 degrees for several days. That's when the seeds start germinating. That's kind of going to be around your February, March time frame. So it's good to get a good pre-emergent out at that time.
Actually, since you're saying that, right, here's a good indicator when the soil is starting to warm up. For cynthias. For cynthias in bloom, the soil is starting to warm up.
That's when soils are
so
starting to warm
crabgrass
up.
will start
When they kind of start dropping their flowers, their blooms, that's the time.
That's the time.
Yep, that's the time. Crabgrass likes to grow in areas that are thin. So proper height cut. Your turf grass is important. they like a lot of irrigation. They like to be wet.
Okay.
So controlling that irrigation, water your lawn infrequent, but for longer periods of time. So instead of doing it 3 times a week for 10, 12 minutes, water it once a week for about 30 minutes.
That's good.
Get those roots down in there deep.
So yeah, you're talking about those cultural practices. That's good.
Yeah, great cultural practices. And then again, a good pre-emergent around February, March time. Good ones are like dementia, pendulin, and barricade.
Yeah.
Work good. And then for post-emergent control, a good one is quinclorac, active ingredient. Again, follow label directions. Get that down, and you'll get some good control on that crabgrass.
Probably gonna be multiple applications. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
for sure.
Yeah, you're not gonna get it the first time.
Yeah, that's
You'll
for
get
sure.
some. It'll start to turn brown and kind of wilt.
Yeah.
And then you'll come back in at appropriate time according to the label and hit it again.
That old crabgrass. Yeah.
It's
I used
tough.
to say, in my landscape, if it wasn't for crabgrass, I wouldn't have a yard.
Okay.
There you have it, Greg. Appreciate that. So Rosa, Joe, fun as always.
Yes.
We're out of time.
Thank
Thank you for having us on.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about anything we talked about, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have over 1,000 videos about all sorts of gardening topics. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.